something, and he wanted to go through with it, you put something that we tried for 2021 and 2022, there'd be no water put in, no nothing until if that street goes in, so it'd just be a building. There is gas down there, but it really, the other thing is the water line has to be 8 inches. And right now, the water coming under the tracks is only 4 inches. So when we do the new street, we put 8-inch in, but we don't know on the old street, on the other side of the tracks, is it 6-inch down there, is it 8-inch? Our records, I don't think are that well recorded. So, but for the future, we do 8-inch, because the sewer would now be able to sewer part of that farm ground for future. And Jesse said he could do a map to show you what that, how many more acres that could be sewerable for expansion that way. But it's really kind of a catch-22. Yeah, we'd like the commercial. My side is I'd like to see it, but we have to have a developer puts in the street, and it has to be curb and gutter, water, sewer, storm sewer. Storm sewer is easy over there, because everything drains north, it just be a culvert in the street, but,
Well, so just to back up, and that's basically what I've been trying to say the whole time, is that we have to have, and I don't want this to be, as a courtesy, we're having Jesse do some of this because it's of our interest too, because we're curious what's out there. But you're gonna have to hire an engineer to get all this stuff in place. It does not mean that we have to approve it and move forward, but we at least have to drop an eye on it to see exactly, does it work? Does it work for you? Does it work for us? Is there gonna be an issue with that right away with the railroad and us connecting the street to the railroad? Does that railroad access, the way the road lays in there, does that work for us with Main Street?
I think based on the, obviously we haven't done any research on any of the property lines there, and just going off of the maps that we've seen, but, obviously, getting that building out of the way that's in the railroad, outside of that, it appears that there's the right access that's connected out for the, for the street right away that would get you to this property.
So what does that process look like? Because I've never had to work with the railroad before. What does that process look like for us to connect to their tracks? Is that our right as a municipality? We can just connect to their tracks? How does that usually work?
To the right away there? You mean it's
across it?
It's when you look at the railroad right away and the city right away, and it's not separated out with different lines. It's all shown as public right away. It's not saying it is, but based on everything that I've seen, it looks like there was a piece that was stubbed out of right away that goes past the tracks. And so I don't think you would have any issues on the railroad side. Obviously, there would be some cost and coordination associated with putting the appropriate crossing in there when you did hard surface it. But
Because obviously, and like I said, I've not had to work with the railroad on anything. How do you start that approval process with them? What does that even look like? Is that something that they do? Is that something that we do? What if they just say no?
Years ago, we talked to them, and at that time, they're actually, what it said, pull the crossing out,
That's what I'm wondering.
get rid of it, don't use it.
yeah, it's a lot easier when you're. It's almost impossible to get approved crossings on railroads. It's difficult. There's an approved crossing there, so
That's what I'm wondering if it's already established. If we can just connect to the other side, make the improvement, build.
I would be under the assumption you could. Obviously, there'd have to be some additional dialogue with BNSF on that piece there. But there's street right away on both sides of it. There's a crossing there, so there would have to be improvements that would likely have to be done to the crossing that BNSF would do and then charge the city or
They were
developer
talking last time about arms.
Oh, actually have it on.
Yep. That was pretty expensive.
Yep, and they would make who's ever doing improvements pay for that. So
Just so you know, this was years ago, but when it come up before though.
yeah, it would be. There would be a process there, but I think the fortunate side is there's city right away on both sides. I mean, I think it's pretty obvious to tell that that's a street crossing, so, I mean, there's probably some sort of identified access at that point, just be a matter of what improvements and process to actually get that. Because, you know, if there's actually, if it's serving something, you know, if there's development, they might have different requirements on doing improvements to it. They're not gonna pay for those improvements, it's gonna be someone else's cost.
So whose responsibility is it to do the legwork on that?
I mean, it's outside of, you know, Mike's development, so I mean, I think it'd probably be good for the city to, I mean, the city right away, if they wanna have, it would probably make sense for them to at least start the conversation, not necessarily be the, maybe just, that would
Yeah.
be my.
Well, like I said, we've always assumed we've had access there because it's always been on the map. But I just don't want you to have any surprises in the end.
Yeah,
You start
exactly.
shoveling a bunch of money into a
Yeah.
development.
Well, and
come to find out you don't
that's
have
why I
access.
wanted to meet with you guys. I don't want any surprises where all of a sudden here, this comes up and then it's not feasible for me to even do.
Well, because that's
I
a
could just
piece-
Scrap the idea.
Because that's gonna be a piece of the puzzle, and like for you, I mean, you don't even have an idea how much it's gonna cost to put the infrastructure in. So that's why, you know, so you don't know if it's cost prohibitive for you to
Yeah,
do what you wanna
exactly.
do, but that's why you're gonna have to get an engineer involved and follow
Yeah.
this and this process, and have Jesse drop it on, make sure that meets everybody's needs, and then almost put it out for an artificial bid letting, so you can do some exploration of what it's gonna cost.
Yeah,
You know,
before we.
And we've talked about that many different times, and I think we're to the point now where you're probably gonna have to spend some money to explore this, and I know that's,
Yeah.
you don't wanna do it, but, as a developer, sometimes you're gonna do some of those things, not sometimes you're gonna have to.
I mean, is that something where we can, get it platted and apply for the grant and whatnot, and then go forward, that way I can sell off
So-
a couple pieces?
Yep, and I know where you're going with it, and we've had this conversation too, because I know you need to sell those off in order to be able to make it go.
Yeah.
I completely understand that, but the problem is in order for us to have even an opportunity to talk if there is a legal avenue that we can look at, where we can make some sort of exemption, to where you put some temporary something in and
Yeah, we
down
can
the
put
road
a
do an
temporary
assessment.
gravel.
We need to have a plan in place, basically showing what you're gonna do.
Yeah,
So we will not be able to plat them for sale until we have all that stuff in place.
okay,
I mean, you have to understand that, because for us, we have to protect ourselves as a city too,
Yeah.
because at some point, we're gonna trust you that down the road, that this is gonna put in, so we have to have all of our ducks in a row with you, with our approval, in order to cover us too. Because the last thing we wanna do is to have something happen in the development, not that it would, but where we end up getting stuck with it, because you do understand that after a while, it becomes our street.
yeah,
So we're still at that crossroads again, where I really think you're gonna have to, if you wanna proceed, you're gonna have to get an engineer on top of it, figure out the utilities, water, get us the development plan, something that is specific enough where you can look at it too, to try to get some costs associated with what the development's gonna be, see if it's gonna work for you. Because really, until we get that piece, we really can't move forward.
Your engineer should be able to provide you an estimate, you know, granted it's an estimate, but,
yeah,
You know, and where we walk a fine line is that we've had a lot of other developers that have asked us to do some things outside, and we want to help. Believe me, we want to help you, and we want this to go. But understand that when we start to let exceptions for one person, then we will be asked to do that in the future. And I can tell you, it was a struggle for Dan Schleter when he did his development. That was an expensive street for him to put in, and they didn't do it. Cliff, CHRC, I mean, the infrastructure is expensive. It
Yeah.
is.
that's
So-
why I'll just have to get in here and figure out if the streets, I mean, if it's gonna be feasible for me to do.
Like I said, we won't approve a thing until you are comfortable with us. Till you give us a thumbs up, we're basically at a standstill.
Okay.
And I just say as a city, we apply for a grant if we get that far.
That would be, I mean, that would be applied for next summer, basically, so, I mean, you
I
could
think
be
it's June 15th.
July 15th is the actual, or, yeah, so I mean, you would, the actual results on that grant would be next fall sometime.
Yeah, but some of the preliminary stuff, I did talk to the city attorney, Patrick Glover, said, get us something together with what it looks like to do a special assessment, 10/20, however we ended up working, and I believe he did get a hold of you twice, send a brief to you, it's been months ago, but, yeah, so I do know that he did research and got back to us on that about how that would work with the street right away and the assessment, so I mean, we have a couple different options between stretching it out, with the special assessment on the taxes, or doing a community access grant, or maybe even a combination of the two. I'm not an attorney, so I don't know how all that stuff works, but I know there are some options.
As long as we know I know what to do going forward, I guess.
Yeah.
You
So-
got to make sure like the railroad ain't gonna give you trouble, 'cause they weren't real cooperative with the elevator part either, for getting onto their property, and they got the right of way and they wanna keep it. And then the other thing is you need to just figure it out that you're gonna have to pay for it all, and if you don't, you're better off, but at least if you can't get a grant, then you know. Because it's probably not a guarantee, or there's no guarantee you're gonna get anything as far as help.
So, and we'll have to figure out the legalities, but normally how the special assessments per lot goes is something that's already established and you wanna go in there and put something in. So with you doing a fresh, it gets a little bit different. So I know you would just assume that each different property owner, as you sell it off, gets assessed for that improvement. But like I said, that normally occurs when you have either an improvement or something that was unimproved and it was already subdivided from the beginning. So there's just some unknowns that we'll have to look at too if it does come to a special tax assessment. So I just can't, my legalese is I'm not real fluent on that piece yet, so.
Biggest thing is just getting an engineer and getting the water and sewer and street laid out.
Yep, so the concept, so if we just move beyond the concept plan and you got us all of the elements that are in the preliminary subdivision plan, it would meet the intent of the concept plan. I think we're probably close enough. And the preliminary subdivision plan is going to have all the elements from the concept anyway, so I would get that done. And it would be, while you're having your attorney do that, understand that you're also gonna have to have the engineer development plan, which by the time you do everything that's in the subdivision, the preliminary subdivision plan, go the extra mile to do what Jesse needs for his engineer development plan, the next step. And the engineer's gonna know to do that,
Yeah.
but make sure to say, hey, let's just do both. That way you get all the utilities, all the infrastructure in there, and you have everything that you need where you can get your costs figured out.
Yeah, you gotta do like a water and a drainage deal too, so.
Yeah, that's the very end step. of
Yeah,
that.
I know, but you still gotta make sure you do it because,
Yeah, and we'll look at all that.
because I know there's already been concerns about the water.
You mean the stormwater?
Just the runoff.
Yeah.
It's gonna be more than what it was.
Because Mike, you had previously done you had Sayer help you do some work when you put up your shop, right?
Yeah.
I mean, those 4 or 5 pages that they did previously, I mean, they could do that for they could update that for the rest of this, and that, I mean, you can basically, yeah, I've seen that before. But you can basically include, I mean, you could just have them update that for the development,
Yeah.
and that would basically, I mean, you could combine your concept plan and your preliminary engineering plan into one kind of deal, so. It's, I mean, you really, to get the process started on your end, you've really already got, I mean, with them doing the survey already and kind of having their drawings set up, I mean, they could give you the information they could put the information on there that you would need for the subdivision regulation approval process. Pretty, I mean,
Yeah, they've done it thousands of times.
yeah, they've already got started on that one, so I mean, you're really not that far.
You're closer, I
Process
think.
started.
Yeah.
You know,
Just be,
you're at the 50-yard line.
Maybe the 40.
Gotta decide if you wanna punch or not.
How much street does McKinney have then, Butch?
Pardon?
How many feet of street would McKinney have?
I think they're close to 500 feet to the end of to the field.
Total.
Because I think we measured it was 4, when we did that water line thing out to the gas, it was about 425 feet. So it's a good 500 foot.
That's through both properties?
Yeah, from the tracks all the way.
But how much is the elevator part then? Where McLaren?
Well, whatever,
It's gotta be about half of that, isn't it?
yeah, whatever
That's
there.
so they know that, do they know that too?
Well, I've told them we're
Okay,
in the process, but, you know, I think it's gonna be up to Mike and then,
Well, that's the thing, you know, Mike